It's time for FLA Law, brought to you by the personal injury attorneys of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes. This hour will be informative, along with taking your questions and comments. Now, here are your hosts for today's show.
Good evening. It is a cold and wet Tuesday evening, but I am here, Matthew Noyes, and the law firm of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes are here just like we are in every Tuesday evening to provide you an hour of free legal advice. We are a live called-in radio show, and so we are here to answer any questions you have regarding the law. As you know from listening to our show in the past, we are a personal injury law firm. We handle auto accidents, trip and falls, work accidents, and even Social Security disability. We are celebrating our 70th anniversary this year. Yes, it's 70. We have been helping people in the Tampa Bay area for 70 years, since 1955. We are the oldest personal injury law firm. And so we thought it'd be good to give back to the community and do FLA law on the radio. So if you have questions regarding personal injury, give me a call, but I'm not here by myself. I have my friend and my colleague, Michael Fainer, here as well. Mike and I go back, way back.
Almost too far.
I know, it's probably 30 years,
30,
right?
It's probably 30 years.
Yeah. Mike is a very fine attorney that does all kinds of areas of law. He does life planning or estate planning. He does corporate law. He does real estate law. He does tax law. He does just a little bit about anything. So you can quiz him on any question that you have. He has volunteered his time, too, to come and answer questions that you have regarding the law. How do you get to Mike? You just give us a call at 727-441-3000, and we can take your call live on the air. If you don't want to be on the radio, but you still have a question, you still want an answer to that, you can check us out live on Facebook on Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. That's our Facebook page, and we are currently live. You can see Mike and myself here on the radio and on Facebook. And you can type in your question right there, and we'll be able to answer that question for you. So 2 ways to get in contact with us, 441-3000, or through Facebook Live on Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. So, Mike, thank you very much for, again, special guest on our radio show.
No problem. Glad to be here.
I am sorry. I thought about you last night at about 11 o'clock. Hey, as a Catholic boy myself, I thought of you, and I was sorry to see that Notre Dame had a great season, but just couldn't get that last win.
Well, all I know is we had a good first quarter and fourth quarter. We're not going to talk about quarter 2 or 3, but hey, you know what? Still a good season for my Fighting Irish, and all I know is Coach Freeman, I think he's got a really good career at Notre Dame. And we're optimistic for the future.
That's right. All the other teams except for Ohio State were sitting on their couches watching. So
and got to give the AP voters, they gave Notre Dame the number 2 spot in the poll, so they didn't penalize us for not winning. But it was a game. It was a good game.
It was a good game.
It was a good game.
I enjoyed it. It was a good game. You got a lot of good players and a good coach on that team too. So that's really good. As you can probably tell, Mike has been closely associated with Notre Dame. Weren't you part of like the Tampa chair and all that stuff?
Actually, interesting story is I was the president of the alumni club for almost 10 years, and actually met when I first came down here in 1994, one of your former partners and namesakes, Guy Perenich, who's a Notre Dame grad.
He is.
Who actually gave me the time of day, and knew Guy before he passed, and great heritage there with the Notre Dame connection and what you guys have done in the community.
Oh, he bled Notre Dame. He was proud to be part of it. I think we knew each other through are different areas of law. And I think there was the Young Lawyers Association
Holy moly,
so long ago.
Believe it or not, we were actually young lawyers at some point.
But I think there was also the connection because I knew you knew Guy and
Yep.
Guy knew you. So that was very cool.
Yeah, like almost every single Perenich ever went to Notre Dame, by the way.
A lot of them did.
A lot
That's
of them
right.
did. I think
Yeah.
4 of 6's kids went to Notre Dame.
Probably.
So, yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, but you've been in the area for a long time. Why don't you tell our listeners, a little bit about you and then about your areas of law as well?
Yeah, I'm a been practicing attorney. I just celebrated 30 years practicing attorney. Grew up in New York. What's very kind of interesting is my parents bought a place here in Pinellas County in 1977.
Wow.
And this was our vacation home. And when my parents retired full time, it just happened to be my 3rd year of law school. And I rolled the dice and decided didn't want to go back to New York. Didn't like cold Midwestern snow.
Yeah.
So literally decided to take a chance and come down here and make my roots in Pinellas, specifically the East Lake, North Pinellas, West Pasco kind of area.
Wow.
So the irony is my office is actually in East Lake. I live in East Lake. Literally where my office is right now is where my parents closed on their first piece of property in Pinellas County back in 1977. Literally where my desk physically is where they did the closing.
Wow.
So I joke with people
cool.
that I actually go back almost 50 years seeing North Pinellas grow.
Wow.
So I was a part-time resident while I was growing up and stuff. And then came down here full-time in 94 and rest is history.
Yeah. I came down in 76.
Correct.
From Chicago.
Yep.
And just the other day, I think it was just yesterday, was the last time Clearwater had snow. I think it was January 20th, 1977. So maybe your parents brought it with them.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that. I do actually only remember one time it snowing here in Florida. And believe it or not, that's when I was up in Gainesville getting my master's in tax law up in Gainesville at UF. So, but actually, you're right. I've never seen snow here in Pinellas County.
Yeah, just one time it's happened. That was back in 1977.
Although it might happen this week.
It may. It may. You don't know. But very cool. And so then you came down here and you started your law practice. Is that right?
Was with a few firms and then started actually my career off as a little bit of litigation. And had an aha moment and said, you know what, I'm good at it, but just don't like it. Don't like the adversarial, want to be more of a planner, want to help people out. So I kind of pivoted in my career, decided to go get my tax LLM. And basically from that point on, my career has been working with the intersection of tax law when it comes to estate planning, corporate real estate, helping people out.
That's really cool.
What I kind of like about my area of expertise is planning. I mean, because most times people come to lawyers because they're getting sued, they've been injured, they've been hurt. And I do a little bit of that. But the good thing about what I do is being able to proactively plan, help people close deals. It's not as adversarial.
That's good.
As
well, and if you do your job right, it prevents more adversarial.
Absolutely. I joke with people that being a litigator, the first part of my career was very instructive on how I could actually counsel clients to avoid it.
Yeah.
And it's actually made me a better person as a result of it.
Yeah, well, that's good.
A better practitioner as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've learned this from you from the last time we spoke, but I always say that you do estate planning, and you corrected me, and it's not estate planning; it's really life planning. Is
life
that right?
and estate planning. Everybody, it's remarkable how many people just want to put themselves in the grave, and I'm like, no, let's keep it alive for a little while. I mean, it dealing a lot with quality of life issues and stuff like that, and it throws people for a loop. But when you actually explain to them that, remember, when you're 6 feet under, you don't have control over the situation. So why not do some little bit planning in regards to disability? Something happens. I mean, I literally talk to people about disability is probably their biggest quality of life issue that they could face.
And that's something sometimes a lot of people don't think about. They do their will, they do their trust for whatever happens when they're dead.
Right.
But what happens when they're incapacitated?
Correct. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people overlook. And it's a simple document, but it's just having the conversation of, well, God forbid something happens to you. Who do you want to be making healthcare decisions? Who do you want to be making financial decisions? Okay. I often will use the classic example of, let's say, if I'm talking to a husband and wife, how many times are you in a car together? What if you're hit by an accident and have to hire you to represent them and they're in the hospital? Who's going to be making healthcare decisions? Okay. What's more interesting, and this is really how I challenge clients sometimes, is, well, why don't I change one or two simple things and say, your spouse has been diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, where it's not just you're going to need them just for the hospital, but what if this is truly a multi-year type disability we're dealing with?
Right.
I mean, same thing with durable power of attorneys. Who's going to be managing your financial affairs? Who's going to be paying your bills? That's kind of critical. I mean, granted, you see it from the injury perspective, they're in a hospital or something like that, ICU for an extended period of time. But what if it is one of those truly disabling type things?
Yeah. I mean, we deal with a lot of clients who get in a serious car accident, they have head trauma.
Yep.
And they can't do the financial decisions that they need to make.
I mean, you see it when you're applying for Social Security benefits.
Right.
I mean, the definition of what disabled is.
Exactly true.
I mean, and a lot of people don't realize it's not necessarily just physical, but it's mental as well.
Exactly.
I mean, unfortunately, as I get older in my career, I see more and more situations of dementia and Alzheimer's. And I'm going to tell you the emotional impact that has on the family. I got to tell you, it's something that until you sit down and you start having that conversation with somebody who's being the caretaker, it's tough.
Yeah.
But just realizing that being proactive, having the conversation with your family, more importantly with your kids, because that's usually, hate to say it, that's the default, is who's going to be taking care of mom and dad when they can't take care of it by themselves.
Yeah. And so what can people do? What can families do to reduce that stress? If mom or dad or
plan.
Okay.
It's often having the active conversation with mom and dad, because for the most part, the default is you're going to probably turn to one of your kids.
Right.
Well, what if you don't have kids?
Right.
Then you've got to look at, okay, brothers, sisters. Well, aren't they going to have they're the same age, aren't you? Aren't they going to be?
Right.
Is it nieces and nephews? Is it trusted friends? What if you don't have anybody? I mean, there's a lot of widowers out there. Unfortunately, what I often will do is push clients and basically say, are you sure? I mean, under those really rare circumstances, often people will ask me to serve as their healthcare surrogate and power of attorney. I don't want to,
right,
but it's one of these that if you don't have anybody else, an attorney might be a good choice. We've also used corporate trustees. Some of the trust companies will also help out.
Okay.
There's also services out there that will basically, obviously for a fee, not only do the caretaking, but also be the quasi-guardian as well.
Right.
Okay.
But planning and talking isn't enough. You have to put it down.
You got to actually not only have the conversation, but put it in paper. I joke with clients, you can either pay me $1 now to have a healthcare surrogate, a living will, or a power of attorney, or pay me $20 in the future to set up a guardianship with the court.
Right.
Because most people, and I don't do guardianship. Okay, so I'll send you out.
I don't blame you. We've tried that.
Trust me, a lot of attorneys, those of us that do probate, guardianship's unique.
Right.
But it's not only emotional, but to me, it drains the estate because of all the fees. And I'm not even talking about attorney's fees. I'm talking about court costs, accounting fees, stuff like that. It's truly sad that when you add up to it, it's something that you could have actively prevented from happening. And you're also in a situation that you don't have any control over it. Okay.
Right.
Now, we've got some great judges here in Pinellas County. If any of them are listening, I just gave you a really good plug.
They're really good judges.
They're really, really good judges. But it's also one of those that they don't know the family dynamic. They're just, unfortunately, they're a piece of paper. So this part of the process is allowing you to take control, for you to make some proactive decisions. I mean, I keep using that word proactive.
So important.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't believe me when I say $1 versus 20, 30, 40 times it.
Right.
I mean, and those situations, I literally have to turn to people. I said, I can't help you at this point. I mean, the failure to plan is actually a plan, I tell people.
Right.
The plan, you're just not going to like the results of it as well.
It's going to be costly too. You're not going to like it. It's going to be costly.
Correct. And
so the $1, quote unquote, $1 that they pay for to prepare, what is that form called?
Yeah.
And
a lot of,
let's stick with the medical decision first, and then we'll switch.
It's basically a healthcare surrogate. The healthcare surrogate basically is saying, God forbid something happens to me, who do I want the doctors turning to be giving what's known as informed consent?
Okay.
It's not the decision to pull the plug. And I really want
That's
to emphasize,
a lot of people think
that's a lot of people. Okay.
Right.
We have a different form for that, but it literally is up to that point. So a lot of times, if it's, let's just take the standard auto accident. It's somebody sitting there in ICU, they're incapacitated. The medical facility needs somebody to give the, quote, informed consent, to be able to talk to the doctor, to basically say, go forth with the surgery or go forth with that. I mean, that basically is what a healthcare surrogate does.
Right.
Okay?
And you don't need to be old in order to require one.
No.
My son is 18. He turns 19 in 2 days. And
holy moly.
I know.
He's
Can you
19. Holy.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember. Watch out. When you got two guys that have known each other 30 years, you're going to hear a lot. I remember when we used to do it this way and stuff. So,
yeah. But so like, I can't make those decisions for him.
No.
And they don't even have to give me any information because he's 18.
They can tell you to pound pavement.
Yeah.
And if you were showing up at my facility, Matt, I tell you, go pound pavement.
Exactly.
I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions. So the other big misconceptions, besides parents for their adult kids, believe it or not, are spouses. The presumption under Florida law, if you go in and if you have to get somebody appointed, is that the spouse has preference. But I actually have clients that won't name their spouses. I'll share the funniest story with people. Believe it or not, I have had spouses of doctors say, I love my husband to death, okay, who's the doctor. I don't want him making medical decisions for me. Yeah. He'll overanalyze it, or he'll go down a thing. And I also find that a lot with spouses that have nurses in the family or in the medical field.
I could see
They'll
that.
say, maybe you won't be objective. It's a different skill set.
Right.
You want somebody who's going to be able to understand, be collaborative with the medical professionals, but also be a little skeptical. Not overly skeptical. And unfortunately, the professions that make horrible healthcare surrogates are, believe it or not, doctors, nurses. I'm going to shock you also, lawyers.
I can imagine.
We
overanalyze everything.
We overanalyze. We're trained differently.
Right.
I mean, I always say law school really screwed our minds up. They made us think like lawyers.
That's right.
And sometimes that's not the skill set that you need for a healthcare surrogate.
Well, especially if the healthcare surrogate, really their job is to further the intent of the person who's incapacitated.
Bingo.
Do what they want.
Bingo.
They would want to do.
Bingo.
Not what the lawyer or the nurse or the doctor would want to do. But,
it's to basically be the patient advocate.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the most critical. And it's also important to name backups on these documents as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll give you the classic example, husband, wife. Well, think how many times husband and wife are in the same car together.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I've had some horrific, and you representing the injured party have always seen this is husband and wife, if they're both in the car, are they both injured? Yeah.
Right.
What if they're both incapacitated? Well, guess what? We got to name a backup. And literally, I will often challenge families is, okay, how many times are the two of you in a car together? A lot. Okay, well then let's put your adult kids in. How many times are you in? Oh, wait a second. Adult kids still living with us. Oh, lots of times. So we always have to name backups. Go one further.
Yeah,
okay,
that makes sense.
But also it's the scenario of have the conversation of, are you sure this person wants the ability to do it?
Right.
Just because you name somebody doesn't mean they have to do it.
Okay.
So it's having the conversation that talk to whomever you're naming and see if they truly would want to. Because sometimes people will be like, I don't know, that's a big responsibility. I don't want it, or I love you to death, but okay, I don't want that responsibility.
And that designation of healthcare surrogate doesn't list, in this situation, I want you to do this. In that situation, I want to do this. It just says, I'm appointing them or designating them to make the decision for me.
Unfortunately, Matt, me and you, we don't have the crystal ball. We don't know what the future will hold.
Right.
Because if we had that ability, we wouldn't be lawyers. We'd be playing the ponies.
That's right.
Or the stock market to make to make a living. A lot of what planning is playing the what if game with people. What if this happens? What if this? I'm also of the theory that sometimes you don't want to be as specific,
right?
Because you won't know certain facts and circumstances that the future may hold.
Right.
It's remarkable how many people come in and say, well, I want a do not resuscitate order. Okay. Well, first of all, for all the people that are out there, a do not resuscitate order is not a legal document. It's actually a medical document. So you actually have to have a doctor sign off on it. And believe it or not, I've had this conversation with a lot of doctors over the years, is they don't like do not resuscitates because they're very rigid, and we don't know the exact time that you may need resuscitation that could actually save your life.
Right.
But if you have a very strict, rigid rule of I will only do this or I will only do that, be careful for what you ask for. You may not like the result.
Right.
So it is very much, I'm more focused on who you're choosing rather than often the mechanics of it.
Being chosen. Yeah,
I think that's really, really critical.
Right. So the designation for a healthcare surrogate really starts from the moment of incapacitation,
correct,
all the way to the death, to the
near death. Right.
There's another form that is called what, and what
we call it a declaration of living will.
Okay.
What's interesting is we can thank something that happened about almost 20 years ago to the date, the Terry Schiavo case.
Right.
Okay. Believe it or not, that was 20 years ago.
I saw something about that. It was like, gosh, 20 years ago.
20 years ago. They just
I knew the attorney who was on it. It's like,
well, everyone knew the attorneys that were on it because it was all local here.
Right.
And actually, last week, the Clearwater Bar did a symposium on it. And
that's why I said, wait a second. Peter was alive back then?
Little Peter Sartez was involved. And the other one that always shocked people is young Scott Swope. Who was people don't realize he was involved really early in the case. Then a whole bunch of other who's who of the legal community here in North Pinellas. But what the living will says is it's the decision whether to pull the plug or not.
Right.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you, the hardest decision you can put on anybody is the ability to pull the plug. Okay. You love someone, you don't want to see them go away, but you don't want them hurt.
Right.
But then you weigh that against, well, wait a second, isn't there something that can be done? And what the Terry Schiavo case did is it forced the Florida legislature to really crystallize what a living will is needed for and clear up a lot of stuff. So the present form that the Florida legislature gave us takes it away from the people, your loved ones, and actually puts it in the medical professionals. Okay. Now, with that, having represented doctors, having served on a hospital board, having really dived into the issue, the doctors are always going to consult the family. But the ultimate decision is a medical decision. And this is the key to remember. If your treating physician determines that you are basically you've been diagnosed with a terminal condition, end-stage condition, or you are in a persistent vegetative state, okay? Those are three really nasty type things.
Right.
Okay, think about it. Terminal. Terminal means nothing more is happening, right? It's beyond hope. End stage, think about it. I mean, I'm not even going to go back to any sort of weird Marvel's Avenger. This is the last stage or end game or whatever it is.
Okay.
It's end stage. Basically, there's no more hope.
Right.
Persistent vegetative state. Those three are very, very significant diagnoses.
Right.
Okay. And you also got to believe that doctors want to help. Hippocratic oath. And I truly believe in our medical fields.
They want to keep them out of any of those three stages if they can.
If they can. But when you get to that stage, what the living will does, it says that if the doctor's made any of those three diagnoses, they have to bring in another doctor who is not the treating physician to basically concur with the diagnosis. So think about it. You're getting a second opinion.
Right.
Everyone's like, well, the medical field is so quick to pull the plug or keep you on. Okay. Let me address the second one, because there's a lot of urban legends about, well, the doctors are just going to keep you on life support forever and ever because they want to build Medicare, build the insurance, and all this other stuff. False. And I'll share a quick story. Having served on a hospital board, okay, I served on St. Anthony's Hospital Board, do a lot with Baycare. Presently, I'm on finance committee for St. Anthony's. The worst thing a hospital could do is extend it, because Medicare and Medicaid, if they even suspect you're doing that, guess what happens? They pull your credentials and you ain't getting that.
Wow.
Trust me, it's not worth the risk for a doctor or facility to put all of their billings from insurance and Medicare and Medicaid at risk.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest things.
Okay.
Number two is also believe in the doctors. Okay. They want to do the right thing.
Right.
Okay. So think about it. You've got your treating physician saying, this is really bad. You have to have a second doctor then come in and say, I concur that this person is really bad. And then what happens is, at that point, they won't basically take any sort of extraordinary means to keep you alive. They'll keep you hydrated.
If the living will says so.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
If the living will says, keep me alive.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. I don't do that, because I think that actually goes to this whole idea of the Walt Disney myth, that we can put somebody in ice and we can keep you in this consistent vegetative state because, you know what, they may have a hope somewhere down the line to find some mystery thing. I got to say, those are the ones where you're going to say, time out a second.
Right.
Do you really care about this person? Because there is an element of pain that person is going through. Okay. It's not perfect, but it's also, if you notice, it's the doctor's not turning to you and saying, you want to pull the plug on your kid or your spouse? That's a traumatic event. Okay. And what's kind of funny is, and you got to have this conversation with clients where, when I first share what a living will is, they're like, well, no, I want my husband to make that decision. And the husband looks at the wife and says, are you sure? And then I kind of share with them, I said, think about this. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he isn't.
Right.
Okay. So it's kind of a no-win situation.
Right.
Because what are you going to think? Okay, well, pull the plug or not pull the plug.
Right.
Got to kind of think this out. And by the way, the decision to pull the plug, it's something that will haunt you your entire life.
Right.
So I often will tell people, isn't that selfish to make you force it upon someone who you care about, that angst and that pain? Okay. Once again, got to be based on medical diagnosis, solid stuff like that.
Right.
Okay. It's tough. It's not perfect. But share with me a better system.
Right.
You really can't at this point.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the living will. I think a lot of people get confused. They hear living will. They think they have a will for their estate planning as well. I
concur with you. Everyone says, I need this, I need that. Totally different documents.
Right.
Okay?
Why don't you tell our listeners what that is?
Real simple. The living will deals with you when you're still alive. A last will and testament deals with you after you're dead.
Right.
Okay. The will is the legal document that basically it's your projection and your intent on how you want your assets distributed when you die. Totally different.
Right.
Okay. The living will, technically the document title is Declaration of Living Will. The last will is last will and testament.
Okay.
But yeah, people get that confused all of the time.
Right.
Just like a lot of people, and I alluded to this earlier, is DNRs or do not resuscitate orders are not the same as living wills.
Right.
And I shock people when I say, you do realize you have to get a doctor. Well, I have a DNR. Well, did a doctor sign it? Nope. Guess what? Not gonna fly.
Oh yeah. Oh, we have a little visitor.
Yeah, we got a little puppy dog
here.
coming on. So,
well, that gives us a good time. We have the puppy coming in, and so we can at least reintroduce you. This is Mike Feiner. He is, as you can tell from his discussion already, that he is well versed in estate planning and in corporate law and real estate. We haven't got to those areas yet, but tax planning as well. He has his LLM, which is
a master's in tax law. I'm one of those crazy people that went 1 year beyond law school.
Yeah, so he is here to answer questions that you may have. We have plenty to talk about. So if you want to just listen, this podcast is wonderful for that as well. But if you do have a question, give us a call, 727-441-3000, or jump on our live Facebook page at Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. And you can type in your question right there. So, Mike, we were talking about wills really quick. Now, people think the wills, and then there's also trust. So if we're shifting from those life decisions we're talking about now, what happens after I pass, there's these wills and there's trust, right?
Correct. And I'm going to streamline this conversation.
Yeah, because we could talk for hours and hours about that.
I'd play what ifs. Some people need trusts, some people don't. It is a very factually based discussion.
Right.
Okay. I had a couple just come in today thinking that they needed a trust. And I turned to him, I said, we went through the whole analysis. I said, if you want to overpay me to create a trust, I will. But I think you can do certain things with a simple will and with beneficiary designations. Okay. It is a complicated multi-step analysis on whether you need a trust or not. I'll give you the classic example because a lot of people will basically say, well, I have $2 million of wealth, so I need a trust. And I said, that's great, but what's the $2 million made of? Is it all real estate? Is it all liquid assets? Is it an IRA? Is it a 401k? What is it?
Right.
Okay. Is it in a closely held business? And what's remarkable is what I just told you can basically shift a decision. Yes, you need a trust, or no, you don't.
Right.
Do you have minor beneficiaries? Are you worried that some of your beneficiaries are going to blow all the money right away? Do you want to tie it up for an extended period of time? So there's a lot of different factors, and reaching out to an attorney and having that conversation is really critical. It's literally, and it takes people aback. Well, why can't you tell me right away? Well, I don't know. I've known you for 3 minutes.
Yes.
I want to get to know you. I want to know what your goals are.
Right.
But a lot of it is preliminarily is what assets do you have? So a $2 million, say someone's worth $2 million, $1 million of it's in real estate in their homestead, and say the rest is tied up in IRAs and 401ks. Okay. And they have a simple estate plan. They have a simple distribution plan where it's all going to their kids. Don't need a trust for that. We can do it through beneficiary designations to avoid probate, through different types of vehicles, whether it be just the simple will, it could be a ladybird deed, it could be working with their financial advisor on a beneficiary designation. I mean, versus, okay, well, if it's $2 million and some of it's in securities, some of it's in real estate. Oh, there's another piece of real estate up north and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the dollar amount isn't definitive. It basically is the characteristics of the assets and how you want them distributed. So give you the classic example. If you have adult kids and you just want to give them straight out, that's easy. But what if you want to give it to the grandkids and they're all minors?
Right.
A little different scenario. Scenario one, probably don't need a trust. Scenario two, absolutely. So the trust is the way you can put certain handcuffs on your beneficiaries moving forward.
Right.
So I'm going to give you the lawyerly answer. It depends.
It does. It really does.
It really does.
And any lawyer that will say you need a will or you need a trust without getting all those answers to the questions really
It's malpractice.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of approach it when I meet a client. First of all, I do a complimentary discussion with them. So it's the first meeting, we sit down, we get to know each other. Want to know what you have, want to know what your goals are, want to know interesting family dynamics. And I'm kind of the weird guy out there that I don't do that much on hourly. I actually like to fixed fee people.
Okay.
So after we have the conversation, I'll quote you a fixed fee and give you a yes or no. The other reason why I do that is this is too important. I want people to have conversations and dialogues with me.
And not be worried about
And not be worried like, oh my God, I'm going to send Michael an email. He's going to charge me 0.1. And yes, there are attorneys out there that do that.
Right.
That's not conducive to getting your estate plan done correctly.
I don't think it's 0.1 though. It's usually 0.3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll share with everyone what my billable rate is. I mean, I bill at $5.25 an hour when I have to.
Right.
Okay. So the ability to sit down and say, or, hey, if you want to hire me on an hourly basis, go forth. But
Right.
I'm going to tell you, it's probably going to be more cost effective to do it. And we're going to get a better product too, when we're not having to look at it. Now, there are my bigger clients that are larger estates. Yeah, we can't do it because
Right.
those are ongoing type relationships where we're always
Something's happening all the time.
Something's always a liquidity event, a sale of business, real estate, and stuff like that. And just a quick side note, because we haven't touched on it yet, is I actually do real estate.
I was going to say
It's
that.
remarkable. I'm a licensed title agent. I have 5 underwriters that we can close residential and commercial deals through. But seeing how sloppy title companies are out there, that literally we're cleaning up messes that people have
Wow.
made from 20, 30, 40 years ago. I've got one right now.
Wait, what kind of messes are you talking about?
Oh, getting wrong legal descriptions, not
Wow.
actually having proper sign-offs, not probating an asset. I've got one right now, and the people came in, and it's a simple estate plan, okay? Their homestead, they have their mother's on the deed. Mom's been dead for 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
If they try to go sell it, they can't sell it because mom's estate was never probated. Okay.
Wow.
So they're very happy that we found this out. And also realizing that when people close on their homestead, okay, title companies can't give legal advice. They are not permitted to.
Okay.
And it's remarkable how many mistakes are done, whether if it's a husband and wife, it should be tenants by right, but tenants by entirety, husband and wife. If it's 2 business partners, okay, we do it one way. Should it be in an LLC? Should it be in the trust? Things like that. Titling matters. And unfortunately, this is job security for the entire real estate industry. It's sloppy out there.
Wow.
And using a title company could be detrimental, and you won't know until many years after the fact. And unfortunately, we have that.
Well, that's why your expertise in the real estate, in the tax,
Being able to
in the
identify those
business
issues.
law.
Correct.
really helps you in all aspects.
Yeah.
Because you can say, okay, opening up a business, an LLC or a corp or whatever it may be, should we do that? What tax consequences and what estate planning consequences does it have?
It's the butterfly effect. If you do something on this side, it's going to impact others.
Right.
Okay. I mean, we get this a lot here in Florida is a lot of Floridians have a second home. Where? North Carolina,
Right.
up north, Georgia,
Yeah.
Tennessee. How is that titled? Oh, by the way, you don't want to hold it in your name because when you die, if it's in your name, guess what? It's time to probate it. Oh, by the way, because the property is up in North Carolina, guess what? You get to probate it here in Florida because this is your domicile. And guess what? You have to open up an ancillary.
Oh, goodness.
Guess what that sounds like? Expensive
Cha-ching.
for attorneys.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. I mean, it's one of these that, and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Pay me $1 now to avoid paying me $20, $30, $40, $50 later. And it's those unfortunate situations that, once again, I'm going to pound it. Proactive planning.
Right.
That's how you basically deal with problems.
Now, I know every scenario is a little bit different, but what would be your recommendation if somebody does own property here but owns property up in
Great question.
North Carolina?
Minimally, okay, if it's a vacation home, which most people are,
Right.
what we would want to do is we would want to put it in the name of their family trust, in their
Okay.
revocable family trust,
All right.
the North Carolina property. Now, what's interesting here in Florida is homestead. You get 10 attorneys in the room, you're going to get 10 different opinions on what you should do with your homestead. Should you put it in a trust? Should you not? Can you do this with it? Okay. I'm of a very interesting opinion that I think if you put your homestead in a trust, you lose your homestead protection. There's an interesting bankruptcy case from many years ago that a lot of people forget about.
Huh.
And what's absolutely interesting, and we can thank the people up in Tallahassee for this, is the term homestead has many different definitions here in the state of Florida. Okay, depending if we're dealing with property taxes, if we're dealing with inheritance, we're dealing with kids' rights. I mean, homestead is probably one of the most complicated concepts. And people say, well, I'm going to lose my homestead, but why? It's also creditor protected. So there's a lot of different variables. But just going back to your scenario, if you have a second home in a different state and you're using it as a vacation home, the easiest way to avoid a probate when you die is to basically put it into a trust.
Okay.
Okay. Going to change one little fact on you. Suppose you're using it for Airbnb and you're renting it out. Don't want to put that in your trust. You would want to put it into an LLC for asset protection. Okay.
Oh, explain that. That's interesting.
Real simple, because remember, a revocable family trust doesn't give you asset protection. And if it is simply a second home, you get homeowners, that should be sufficient. Okay. But if you're running it as a commercial venture, higher risk.
Right.
Okay. You want to spin it off to an LLC. So God forbid something happens to it, you're isolating that risk
Just
versus to that property.
Instead of all
Correct.
the other
I know
assets.
UPI lawyers hate that because that limits your ability to go after. But you know what?
Well, let me tell you a little story. Is that I recently had a case where it was a lady was struck by a golf cart in downtown Dunedin. She got the driver backed into her and ran her over, broke her shoulder. She went to 3 different law firms. One that is
To not
quote
be
unquote,
named.
is quote unquote the largest law firm, and they all told her. So she told me that they could not help her because all the owner of the golf carts, all his assets were tied up in a revocable trust. And it was like, I was like,
oh wait, let me laugh at that. Wow.
It was like, I don't do wills and estates or trust, but even I know from listening to Mike Fainer that doesn't give you the
A
protection.
revocable, it does not give you asset protection.
Yeah.
Okay. There's things that we do within a trust. I mean, the most common thing is to spin up an LLC to have a commercial enterprise within it. So God forbid something, you could always jettison that part.
Right.
I mean, and you'll appreciate this. Good asset protection always starts off with good insurance.
Right.
Have high limits. You as a personal injury lawyer love it when I tell everyone, get high limits, get an umbrella. It is the best asset protection you can do.
It sure is.
And I tell people, we don't need to be doing things in the Bahamas and here, all these exotic. We don't need to spin up a Nevada LLC with a South Dakota trustee and do offshore this or that, okay? Having good insurance mitigates 99.5% of the risk.
That is the best asset protection
It
there
is.
It just drives me crazy how people do that.
And there's so many cases. I mean, we'll even go back to the one of the most interesting cases here in Pinellas County was the Hulk Hogan case.
Yeah.
Everyone knew he didn't have sufficient insurance, and he was vulnerable as anything.
Right.
And the rumors are, insurance basically said, here's the insurance limits. We're out.
Right.
And that was a very low amount of what I've heard through the grapevine.
Right. That's
so
my
Hulk Hogan
understanding.
had to go into his own individual assets, and he was vulnerable.
Right.
Complete. But having good auto insurance, having coverage, having an umbrella, I think it's
the
a
best way
necessity.
to protect your assets.
And you as a personal injury lawyer should take what I just said and just blast it all over the place.
I try.
You try. And I mean, you hear it. Oh, well, unfortunately, insurance, I have minimum coverage here in the state of Florida. Guys, girls, everyone who can hear me, please, if any insurance agent tells you, oh, well, you just need the minimums, go shop it around.
Right.
It is the best coverage that you can have. Minimums are just that, minimums.
Right. And in fact, in Florida, the minimum bodily injury liability coverage is zero.
Yeah.
Because you're not required to carry
You're
bodily
not
injury.
required.
And so there is absolutely no asset protection if you get full coverage in the
Correct.
state of Florida.
Yep. And everyone's always like, well, I had full coverage till you look at their policy.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to tell you that one of the most underutilized policies are umbrellas as well.
Right.
Umbrellas will cover you not only for excess on your auto, but somebody slips and falls. It's truly comprehensive.
Right.
They're also
And it's not that expensive.
Thank you. That's the thing. And I'm going to bash the insurance industry. And Matt loves it when I bash the insurance industry because he's battling them.
We put our swords on together.
For this one. Okay. It's remarkable how these insurance agents will not sell umbrellas. The reason? I'm going to shock you. Their commissions suck on it. They don't have a good financial incentive. It's also a hard product to explain to people. So a lot of insurance agents just won't sell it. Now,
That's the problem we had with uninsured motorist coverage too.
Bingo.
And the law had to change to say, okay, you A, have to do it, and B, they have to sign off on it.
Correct. But it's remarkable. And don't get me wrong. Okay. I think price is important. I mean, I just had to reprice my auto insurance.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. For the same freaking coverage, pardon my language, literally the discrepancy was $5,000. And on the same type of coverage. So I've got to scratch my head and say, what the blank's going on in this market?
Right.
Okay. But I mean, have the uninsured.
Right.
Have the umbrella. Okay.
See, I always say on this radio show, I'm never going to go a week without talking about uninsured motorist coverage.
You should.
And listeners, I didn't even have to bring it up.
That's
Michael
right.
Fader brought it up
And for the
me.
record, if you can see us on video, I don't have a script in front of me. He didn't feed me those lines or anything like that.
Mike
it's just,
knows how important it is. So
I mean,
it's good to do it.
The areas that I practice in, I also do asset protection.
Right.
Once again, this is all proactive planning.
Right.
And I also tell, I mean, you've known me for 30 years and you know I can be a sarcastic you know what.
That's why I like you.
That's why
we get along.
But what's funny is asset protection. You know what the best asset protection in the world is? Don't do anything wrong.
That's right.
If you don't do anything wrong, you don't have to worry about
That's
it.
right.
Now, pardon my
That's
language, blank happens.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why you have insurance.
Right.
So
And we personal injury attorneys don't like to go after individuals.
Correct.
The only time we have to go after individuals is if they don't plan and they don't protect their assets.
Right. And it's not complicated. Just having good insurance, once again, going to sound like a broken record player. Get the uninsured, get the umbrella.
Right.
Okay.
The umbrella is so important.
And then I mean, I'm going to give you the softball question too that I get from my clients. They're like, well, if I have all the insurance, the personal injury lawyers are going to go after us. Right. But that's what you're paying for. So
That's
they
right.
don't touch your individual assets. Accidents happen.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you deal with I think it's always interesting, and I'm going to share with everyone, just going back to torts 101 in law schools, is what is negligence? Negligence is not intentional. It is, oopsie, I did something wrong by mistake.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that's really what negligence is,
Exactly
and that's
true.
what an auto accident.
Right.
We're not dealing with the intentional.
No.
We're not talking, I'm coming in here with a shotgun and blowing you away. We're not
But these
talking.
are accidents.
Right. These
and
are
accidents
happen.
But you also have to be accountable
Absolutely.
and responsible for your actions,
Mhm.
whether they're negligent or not. Insurance companies aren't going to pay for a claim that isn't proven,
Absolutely.
whether it's negligence or not. So just because you have lots of insurance coverage doesn't mean you get that person's going to be able to attach to all those insurance premiums.
Correct.
Michael, we've been talking a lot. Before we wrap up, I do want to give you the opportunity to tell our listeners how they get in touch with you.
Sure. I am, as I said, I'm a tax attorney. We specialize in a holistic approach by saying we also do life and estate planning. We do probate. We do trust administration. We do corporate. We represent businesses.
You are
in their
holistic.
in
You are so
holistic.
That's a perfect definition for your area.
We do
for your
real estate
practice.
because, I mean, I'll have a client come in and we'll represent them on the business. Then through the life cycle of the client, we'll do their estate plan. We'll help them sell their business. We'll help them sell their residential, their second home. We'll work with their CPAs to minimize their taxes, to be tax efficient. I mean, it's remarkable how much tax touches each of the areas.
Right. So how can they reach you?
Oh my God! First, got to tell them what the hell I do.
Well, we only got about 2
I know.
minutes, so.
Actually, the name of our law firm is Fainer PLC. Our website is www.fainer, FAEHNER.com.
I have to look that up all the time.
I know it's a wacky German name, and our phone number is 727-443-5190.
And if you could see Michael now, as you could probably hear from our discussion, he's so down to earth and such a nice guy, but he's also very casual. So you never have to worry about feeling stuffy. You're talking to some stuffy tax attorney.
No,
that's what I try to avoid as much as possible.
Our office is up in Eastlake, specifically. If everyone knows where the Eastlake Woodlands, now Ardea Country Club is, we're actually right diagonal. My office looks out on the golf course and a swim and racket club. So we've kind of embraced
Mike's
this.
in shorts and sandals now.
Flip-flops. They're not sandals.
I'm sorry.
I mean, and I often tell people, if you don't like the fact that I'm casual, we're not going to be a good fit whatsoever. If you're looking for stuffy, I'm not the stuffy guy.
Mike's a great guy. Make sure you reach out to him. Mike, thank you very much for another episode. I got to bring you back because I have all these sheets of questions.
We didn't even get to it. So
thank you very much, all you listeners. Thank you for listening. This does wrap up this week's episode of FLA Law on the Radio. As I always like to end, drive safely and watch out for those who don't. Take care. Good night.